Yo, we're back! And this time we're covering episode 2, Washington, B.C. But right away I want to address the mess up I did last time. I called poor old Diamond Head Tetraman when he's really a Petrosapian, so apologies to Diamond Head and all Tetramans and Petrosapians. My bad. Anyways, we start off on William Street, of all places, and I looked into it, couldn't find any of the Man of Action writers working at Adult Swim, so coincidence? Probably. Somewhere on William Street, there's a burning building, and in that burning building, there's a mother and son trying to escape the flames. After about 10 seconds of tension, they are saved by a heat blast, aka Ben. And Heat Blast does some sweet fire bending to dissipate the flames, and then he does this really cool, fire tornado to take them all down to the ground. Ben starts humble bragging about his excellent savior of these people when he notices a kid in the crowd that is gathered has a golden sumo slammer card. And he gets right up in this kid's face and basically demands the card. But Grandpa and Gwen pull up in the rust bucket and tell Ben he has majorly goofed, and that the real bad guys are robbing a jewelry store a couple blocks away. Then we get the sweet, sweet theme song. It stuck itself upon his wrist with secrets that it hid. Now he's got superpowers, he's no ordinary kid, he's Ben 10. Anyway, watching these original episodes again this time around, I'm really noticing that this first playlist of Aliens is super balanced compared to some of the other ones. The Alien Force one is alright, and it's got a lot of fan favorites, but it has Alien X taking up a whole slot for no reason. Ugh. I really think Alien X is kind of one of their biggest missed opportunities, but we're not there yet, I digress. Back to this episode. Some generic-looking bad guys in a generic-looking bad guy car are doing generic bad guy stuff. In the rust bucket, Gwen and Max are giving Ben just absolute grief about being heat blast inside the vehicle, culminating in Gwen spraying him with a fire extinguisher. Kind of a dick move, but I'll allow it. Once the rust bucket gets close enough to the generic bad guy car, Ben does a flame Kamehameha, causing it to crash into a wall. And he steps out to arrest them, I guess, but the Omnitrix times out. So he's suddenly standing there as just Ben, and they're about to leave when the real cops show up and steal all of Ben's glory. Later on, we see a very angry bald man beating on the door of one Dr. Animo, who is a villain and recurring, to say the least. Inside Animo's office or lair or what have you, we see a bunch of animals in tanks and cages, and this angry bald man is snooping around looking at everything until he's jump-scared by Animo. And then he reveals that he is, in fact, the landlord. That's how he got in. And he is here because Animo is 6 months behind on rent. And I'm over here there is not a place in this universe that lets you get longer than 3 months behind on rent without just indiscriminately booting you to the street. But it's a cartoon. Animo just blows him off, telling him, yeah, I spent all my money on research. Nerd! Why don't you pay your damn rent, and then you won't have 10-year-olds kicking your ass and getting in the way of all your special science projects. Animo and his landlord both threaten to kick each other out. And then Animo puts on this funky-looking helmet, which, if you've seen this before, you know exactly what it is. He turns his frog into a giant mutant, basically, and the frog eats his landlord. He makes a really, really bad pun, and then the frog hawks the landlord like a loogie. Animo picks up his shopping list and screams at it, and then he's saved from his emotional distress by a commercial for Megamart that's so well-timed it must be the conception of a screenwriter. Meanwhile, at Megamart, Grandpa Max continues to display his love of unusual foods, and Ben, yet again, decides to abuse his superpowers. Gwen is in the middle of begging for a regular dinner for a change, and getting laughed at by Grandpa. She discovers that every single box of cereal in the cereal aisle has been opened by Ben, Gray Matter, looking for the Golden Sumo Slammer card. The manager shows up and blames Gwen without asking any questions and makes Grandpa Max buy all of the cereal that's open. What an amazing protagonist Ben is turning out to be. Really just Wow. Ben and Gwen argue about shiny cardboard, which sounds dumb, I'm not gonna lie, but trust me, it's a real thing. Grandpa tells Ben that he understands that this card is important to him, but that he may be getting a little bit obsessed with it. Further into the store, Ben sees a display of the Sumo Slammer cards and decides to head there, while Grandpa and Gwen go to the pet aisle to pick out dinner. I don't even want to know. Oh god. The store begins vibrating, and then Animo smashes in with his giant frog, knocking Ben into a pile of boxes. Ben stands up and looks at his watch, but he has to just stand there impotently because it has not yet recharged from his cereal escapades. A few stupidly brave security guards try to rush at Animo, but he just hops right over them and lands in the pet department right in front of Gwen and Max. They jump out of the way as he sets off his helmet beam and turns a bunch of the other animals into his mutant creatures. Ben, with his Omnitrix still recharging, decides to be a hero anyway, and he hops on a scooter to lure the animals away from his family. Now we're talking. Miraculously, this works. Ben does some awesome scooter tricks, resulting in the giant hamster getting crushed by a bunch of stuff. Dr. Animo rants a little bit about how Washington, D.C. is going to become Washington, B.C., and then he hops on his giant parrot and flees. The very grateful store manager offers Ben literally anything he wants from the store in exchange for saving it, but before he can claim his golden cardboard prize, Grandpa Max rushes him out. The Rust Bucket chases the giant parrot through the city, while Grandpa Max reminisces about his good old days, causing Gwen to be already suspicious about his plumber story. Grandpa Max notices that Ben is still sulking and asks him what's wrong. Ben complains yet again about not getting his golden Sumo Slammer card, and Grandpa Max drops some heavy knowledge about how just because you're a hero doesn't always mean that people will know or that you will be rewarded for it. Gwen, being the super genius that she is, has already discovered Animo's entire life story and backstory on the internet. Turns out, he's a giant baby. His whole thing is that he thinks he deserves an award that he didn't win. Get over yourself, man. Gwen points out the parallel here between Ben and Animo. He kind of just brushes it off and ignores her, and then she makes the same joke Animo made about Washington, D.C. being B.C., and that gives Ben his Dr. House moment and knows exactly where Animo's headed. At the museum, they find Animo, who seems to be tampering with something. He claims that he's going to be able to bring the dead back to life, which, I don't know about you, that sounds to me like it would make way more money than any other genetic research. Yeah, he's a genius. Not. Animo zaps a mammoth, causing it to come back to life, so Ben transforms into Forearms, his current heavy hitter, a big ol' red guy with 4 arms. He's actually the Tetramand, by the way. And he sends Grandpa and Gwen off after Animo, while he wrestles with the mammoth. Grandpa and Gwen run straight into the giant parrot, unfortunately. However, Gwen just straight up beats its butt and then they take off. Animo decides to step up his game a little bit and reanimates a T-Rex, and Ben is still fighting the mammoth. He does a sweet rapid spin and chucks it at the wall, but this causes him to be so dizzy that he vomits everywhere. Dr. Animo humble brags about how he's about to go steal the award he thinks he deserves, and he stomps off on his T-Rex. His giant parrot snags Gwen and follows him, and Grandpa Max picks up a piece of paper. Forearms does a massive Goku-style jump, grabs the parrot's tail, then gets shaken off and chucked to the ground, where he leaves a huge crater before reverting into Ben. Grandpa pulls up in the RV and snags Ben before continuing to chase the parrot and the T-Rex. The T-Rex smashes a bunch of stuff, and ends up with a familiar-looking gold card stuck in his claw. Gwen then finds herself in a very Gwen Stacy situation, stuck at the top of a tall structure. Grandpa shows Ben the piece of paper he found, and they deduce that Animo must be heading for the home of the guy who actually won the award that he's after. Like he didn't just say that out loud? Whatever. Gwen uses her emergency cell phone to call Grandpa Max, but actually ends up dropping it before she can say anything to him. Ben does yet another reusable Sailor Moon transformation sequence and turns into Stinkfly, a big old stinky bug that can fly. He's not my favorite, but he is pretty cool. I'm sure he's somebody's favorite, right? Anyway, Ben, transformed into Stinkfly, manages to catch Gwen just in time. They are then chased by the giant parrot, and Gwen is shrieking her head off. Calm down, Gwen. You've usually got yourself way more under control. Unable to shake the bird, Ben does some sweet flying maneuvers, drops Gwen into Grandpa Max's arms, and dive bombs the parrot. Meanwhile, at the posh rich dude's house, Animo and his T-Rex smash in through the wall and demand the award that he so wrongfully deserves. Ben makes what I guess counts as a mature decision and decides to save the posh rich dude instead of getting his golden sumo slammer card. Animo wonders aloud what Stinkfly is, and Stinkfly replies that he is Stinkfly. Stinkfly then Stink juices the T-Rex, and instead of saving the award for posh rich dude, he lets it smash. Honestly, that's probably for the best. Stinkfly then takes Animo's funky helmet and smashes that too, causing all the animals to turn back to normal. Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max all watch smugly as Animo's led into the back of a cop car, ranting about how he deserves his award. Ben reflects on how that kind of sounds a little familiar, and maybe he's starting to learn his lesson already. Later on, Ben has finally come to terms with the fact that he didn't get his card, but he did decide to keep Animo's helmet as a trophy. Which, honestly, that's a way cooler trophy if you ask me. Gwen thanks Ben for saving her life, and then we roll the credits. Man, this was a great episode. We got 3 more transformations, we got recurring villain Dr. Animo, and Ben is actually starting to learn how to be a hero already. Episode 2? I felt like it took longer, but no, I'm right, it does take longer. But these little nuggets of like, oh, he is learning. That's why I love this show. He's got a great character arc. Not as great as Kevin, and nowhere near as great as Zuko, but I think we can safely say that Ben is a pretty great protagonist. Most of the time. Anyway, we'll be back next time for episode 3. And I hope you all are enjoying this. I know I am, so do the things. And I'll catch you next time.